This is part 3 in a series of 4 Excel tutorials for beginners. In this tutorial, we will learn how to construct a graph. This is the properly formatted spreadsheet that we constructed in part 1, and it also contains the line S data that we determined in part 2 of this tutorial series. My next task is to construct a graph. Let's construct a graph by plotting the absorbance versus protein concentration. The convention is Y versus X. So when we plot absorbance versus concentration, this means that the protein concentration is displayed on the X-axis and the absorbance is displayed on the Y-axis. In order to construct a graph, we will click on the Insert tab and then look where it says Chart. Excel refers to graphs as charts. The type of chart or graph that I want is a scatter plot. So I'm going to click here. There are several different types of scatter plots, but I want one that just shows the points and not a line drawn through the points. We will draw a best fit line through the points later. So once I've made my choice, Excel will put the plot on top of the graph. I don't want the plot to obscure my data, so I can click it and drag it and move it to another place on my spreadsheet. Now the graph looks a little strange right now because Excel doesn't know what data we want to plot. So if we click anywhere in the plot area, if we right click, we will get a choice called Select Data. I'm going to remove Excel's choice and add my own. So I click on Add. The series name, I'll just call this Protein Concentration. And then I need to select my X values. So I click on this arrow, which brings me back to the spreadsheet, and my X values are the protein concentrations. I click on this down arrow to get me back to the pop-up box. Now I select my Y values, again by clicking on this arrow, and my Y values are the absorbances. And I click on this arrow to get me back to the pop-up box. I now click on OK, and then OK again, and now my graph looks a little better. But I still need to format it, and I need to add axis titles. I'm going to start by right-clicking on the X-axis and then choosing Format Axis. There are lots of axis options right here. I can set the minimum and the maximum. Excel has chosen 1.2. I prefer it to be 1.0 since that's my highest point. I also want to divide this into major and minor units. Excel has chosen 0.2. Maybe I'll choose 0.05 here. The tick marks, I prefer to have my tick marks on the inside, although you can place them where you like. But you should have tick marks there so that the reader can determine where the values are on your graph. I'm also going to click on number here because 3 places past the decimal point is a little bit too much for the graph. It makes it a little too crowded. So I'm going to choose 2 here and then add. One of the other things that I'm going to do is Excel draws grid lines on the graph, and I don't like how those look. So I will select the grid lines and then hit delete and do the same thing here and click delete. You can leave them on if you like. Now I'll go to the Y-axis and do the same thing. If I right click again and hit Format Axis, I get the same choices. And again, Excel has chosen a maximum of 1.6, but I notice here that I just barely go over 1.4. So why don't I choose 1.5? And my major units aren't divisible by 0.2 anymore, so how about I choose 0.3? And then maybe 0.05 for my minor units. And again, I'll want my tick marks on the inside. And for the number, again, I think 2 places past the decimal point for my graph are plenty. So I will choose Add. So I'm satisfied with the appearance, so I can click out of this menu. Now I need to label my axes. So when you're in the graph area, chart tools will automatically come up. So if I click on design, I can then click on add chart element and add my axis title, which is primary horizontal. I get a little box that says axis title, and this is protein concentration, and the units were micrograms per microliter. I'm going to type an M now, but I will fix that. In order to change the M to a mu, I'll have to go back to the Home tab and to the font group, click on this arrow, and then change this to symbol. I can do the same thing here. Actually, now that I'm in the Home tab, I can just go up here and do it that way. And I want to subscript the water, so I'll highlight the 2, go to the font group, and choose subscript. So now my x-axis is properly displayed. Let's add the y-axis. So add chart axis title, primary vertical. This is absorbance at 280 nanometers. I'm also going to look at my chart title. I'm going to expand on it a little bit. Protein concentration measured by UV absorbance. And the title is a little large, so I can highlight the title and then go back to the Home group, and I can make the font a little smaller. The next thing that I want to do is I want to draw a best fit straight line through my points. In order to do this, I can right-click on any of the points and then choose Add Trend Line. And then here, we want the trend line to be linear. Linear is already chosen. And I want to display the equation on the chart, and I also want to display the r-squared value. I don't want to set this y-intercept at 0 because I've already defined my y-intercept, so I'm not going to check that box. You can do some other things if you like with the line. You can format what color it is, or what dashes or dots are there. You can do lots of formatting and do anything that you like. But I think I'm going to leave it the way it is. I am, though, going to move the data over here so that they're not obscured by my line. And I'm going to close out of this box. So Excel has plotted the data, and I have my best fit straight line. I have the equation of the line, y equals mx plus b, and I also have the r-squared value. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my line S data and just make sure that the values of the slope and the y-intercept are consistent with my line S data, and they are. There are different numbers of significant figures here. You can actually adjust these by hitting Format Trend Line and then go back here and look at number. Sorry, that's on Format Trend Line Label. And then look at number, and here you can specify how many significant figures that you like in your trend line label. So in this tutorial, we have successfully constructed a graph. This is a standard curve. It relates protein concentration to its absorbances. And these protein concentrations, these solutions are standards. What that means is that I can use this standard curve in order to determine the concentration of an unknown protein solution. We will do that in the next tutorial. But before we leave this tutorial, I wanted to let you know that if you select this graph here, you can copy this into a Word document if you are doing this as part of a lab report, for example. So here you would just hit copy and then paste and go into your Word document, and you could paste the graph into your Word document.